and it is not very much audible to the attendees. Can you please check?
Okay, just hold on. Okay, is it a little better now?
Yeah, it seems better now. We can continue. Thank you.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'll try to be a little slow, and if there are any questions for any slides to be repeated, we can do that as well. So we move on to the next session, the main portion of the presentation, which is leveraging the AEIOU framework. And for that, we need to understand what the framework is and then how we can use it. The first block, as far as the A is concerned, represents awareness. And in the awareness portion, what we are trying to say here is that it's very important to have awareness of everything that is happening around us in terms of our team. And there's an exercise there, right, which has 10 questions. I would request the audience to go through that exercise quickly, to go through those 10 questions and try to figure out what is the comfort level with respect to the answers, right? So this is an exercise which can be carried out offline. The 10 questions are sample questions. You could have a different set of questions and a different number of questions as well. Now, for a score, the recommended score there is 8 out of 10. If you get around 8 out of 10 right, or you're able to answer them comfortably, then you can move to the next block of the ladder, which is E. But otherwise, it's very important to increase the awareness of the team if the comfort level is in answering such questions, right? So the questions would be, what is my team structure? Who are the people who are taking responsibility for certain initiatives? Who are key customers? What are the roles and responsibilities? What are the targets for the team? Things like that. And really building awareness about everything that is happening is very, very critical. How can we build awareness? That's fairly straightforward. For example, curiosity makes a big difference. It's important to ask questions from colleagues, right, and from others around us on what is happening. We can keep eyes and ears open, coffee discussions, lunch discussions. There's a lot of information that we can get, right? And then there are mailers and announcements which come out from time to time or email. So instead of putting them into some folder within our email, maybe we can go through them when time permits. Again, to try to build up our awareness of what is happening. In a nutshell, the first step in the AEIOU framework is building awareness of the chosen team, building awareness of the chosen team with respect to, the various activities which are happening, right? What is the team involved in? Now, when we move on to the next step of the ladder, so to say, the next step of the ladder represents enthusiasm. The E in AEIOU represents enthusiasm. And the message is that awareness has to be translated into enthusiasm and into instances where we volunteer for participating in various initiatives. Sometimes it's possible that we build up the awareness, but we don't do anything about it. And therefore, the exercise on the slide attempts to help to figure out where do I stand on the enthusiasm scale. Once again, these are only sample or recommended questions. The user of the framework, right, people who are using the framework can come up with their own set of questions. But the idea is, can we assess what's the enthusiasm level overall? And then based on the results of the self-assessment, if you get, say, for example, 4 out of 5 questions correct, as in you can answer them comfortably, probably it's time to move to the next step of the ladder. But otherwise, perhaps there is a situation where we are building up our awareness, but we're not demonstrating the enthusiasm as much as we should. Now, beyond enthusiasm, when we move beyond enthusiasm, it's very important to translate the enthusiasm into what would be the next step of the ladder, which is the involvement. And I represents involvement in the framework. And this might happen to us sometimes, or it might be a situation where we see it happening to people in our teams if we are in leadership roles. That is, we might send out an email saying, hey, I want to participate in this, but the actual participation does not happen, right? So translating enthusiasm to involvement would be the next step of the framework, of the ladder. And again, the framework has an exercise with 5 sample questions where a person can assess that, am I translating the enthusiasm, my awareness and enthusiasm, into actual involvement, or is it just written on paper? And this is very, very critical, because there are so many times when we have situations where people, all of us have faced this, are trying to run some initiatives, but there is just no support at all, right? And very few people come forward to volunteer, to get involved, to participate, and to support the people who are actually trying to achieve something. So the involvement part is very critical, and it shows whether the awareness and the enthusiasm is getting translated or not into actual involvement. Now, at this stage, it's a good point to take a very quick recap on the 3 steps that we have covered so far. One is on the awareness side, right, which is building up awareness on the team's activities. And by team, remember that the team could be any one of the teams that were depicted in the earlier figure. So it could be the immediate team, or it could be the next level team. For example, if I'm in a project engineer role, right, a software developer or a project engineer role, my immediate team will be the project team. However, I will also be a part of the larger account team. So when I'm assessing myself using the AEIOU framework, it can be either for the project team or it can be for the account team. So what that means is that if I'm evaluating my own awareness of various topics, it could be either at a project level in terms of, say, which modules are going on, when is the next release, and so on, or it could be at an account level in terms of which are the other projects going on, right? What are the key customer challenges? What more can we do for this particular customer, and so on. So the team selection is very critical, and then we build up our awareness. Once the awareness is there, then we demonstrate some level of enthusiasm in terms of participating. So let's say that there is a different project where there is a technology for cloud computing being adopted, and it is one of my interest areas. Then I can volunteer to participate in that in some capacity, maybe half an hour a day or 1 hour a day. Similarly, once the volunteering is done, then you actually have to execute on that. That is where the involvement comes in, the actual involvement, right? And following all 3, awareness, enthusiasm, and involvement, is a definite way to convey to your management, to your team, to your colleagues, to your seniors, and to your juniors, right, that there is a very different approach that you're following as far as work is concerned. And all this is over and above the regular goals and objectives, but it's not something which will interfere with those. So what I mean to say is, if you get involved in one or two additional initiatives for one of the teams, it is unlikely there will be any opposition. Yes, you will need to devote time to those, but that's a question of how you can manage the time and perhaps select some initiatives which are connected with the current work that you're doing anyway, right? So that it ties back. Now, with that background, we can move forward to the next step of the ladder. Some of you might have guessed it, which is once you have the involvement in one or more initiatives, is it possible to go ahead and take ownership for at least one, if not more than one, of the initiatives? And we need to remember that it is possible to take ownership even without having that particular designation. So what I mean by that is there might be a new component that needs to be developed. There might need to be an event that needs to be set up or conducted. There might be a new service line to be launched, to be incubated and launched, right, at senior levels. Maybe it is important to launch a new service line. And there is hesitation often to move beyond involvement. We are ready to support somebody else, but sometimes there is hesitation in terms of moving to the next level, which is putting our head on the line and taking ownership, taking responsibility and being accountable. So that's where the O of the AEIOU framework comes in, which is the ability to take ownership as far as the initiatives, at least one or more initiatives, are concerned. Once again, if you take a look at the questions, right, on your screen, then the assessment that needs to be done, the self-assessment again that needs to be done is have I in various initiatives into ownership, right? Am I leading by example? Am I showing the way to others? Am I an individual contributor, right? So when you're on the I step of the ladder, you're typically, you're often a contributor, an individual contributor, and you offer your specialized skills to somebody else. But here, once you own an initiative, then it's very important to move to the next level and to lead. And there it is important to scale out, to use the network, and to reach out to people and to get people to support, right? Simple examples would be, have I created an artifact, right? So depending on the role, a developer, right, might ask himself or herself, is there any component that I've created? If there's an architect, it could be in terms of a framework or an accelerator that has been created by the person. Finally, and most important, is there a way, so am I increasing as an owner of various initiatives? Is my ownership increasing quarter on quarter and year on year, right? Ownership for various initiatives. So that's where we are in terms of the ownership aspect. And then the approach is very similar. The approach is that, if you get a high score, if you can answer a lot of questions comfortably, then you can move beyond O to the next block. Otherwise, perhaps the involvement is not getting translated into ownership, and maybe we need to increase our ownership there. Now, at this stage, I will take a look at some of the questions that have come in so far, and I'd encourage all of you to keep the questions coming in, and I'll read out some of the questions. One question is, how do we get, this is very interesting, how do we get involved in whatever is going on when we are not interested in what is going on? So, the easy way to answer that question is that, when we talk about the AEIOU framework, the framework is about self-development, and the assumption is that a person will have the desire and the interest in doing well at his or her work or job, right? And when you want to do well at your work or job, it's very important to find things around us that interest us. So it could be a technology, it could be an initiative, it could be a particular area of work. So let's say that we are in a testing role, right? Maybe we are not interested in any of the testing initiatives. Perhaps our interest is that more in development side. So then we will need to speak with our managers and try to move into an area that we are interested in. And if every area in the at work is something that we are not interested in, then perhaps we should ask ourselves whether we are in the right line or not, right? But the assumption is that there will be at least some areas that we will be interested in, and that we can then try to grow and follow up on. So that is one question. One other question that has come in is, why is it that most of the self-development is taken in a route of promotion and not in terms of long-term growth? My way of looking at it, so this is the question, my way of looking at this is, I don't think self-development should be done with the objective or the sole objective of getting promotions. I feel personally that if we do try to develop ourselves, every one of us, then promotions are a byproduct, as in, the promotions will happen when they have to happen. I know that sounds cliched, but the point that I'm trying to make is that if I do well consistently, and if I'm in a fair environment, then it will be difficult for that environment and for that system and for that company to ignore my claims for promotion as and when they have to happen, right? So self-development actually, you have answered it in the question, self-development actually is important for long-term growth, right? And the objective of self-development should not be getting promotions or getting them faster. The objective of self-development should be in terms of doing well over a long period of time. I'll take one more question and then we can move back to the slides, which is, how does the framework fit into a person currently at bench and is not sure which project he will get staffed in next? Very good question and very relevant question. The framework is not really meant for a person who is on a project or on the bench. It's meant for every individual. One example, if you are on the bench, where the framework can be used is awareness, build awareness of what are the projects which are coming in or which are currently likely to come in. So that's one example, and this can be done by speaking with seniors and other people around. What are the technologies that will be used on those projects? So build the awareness. Then send out a mail or speak with people demonstrating the enthusiasm to work on a proof of concept, for example, or build expertise on one of those technologies. All this can happen while on the bench. Perhaps work on a certification if there is enough time in one of those technology areas, right? And some hands-on exposure. And essentially then, get involved in whatever are the activities that are going on. They could be component building activities, they could be training activities, they could be certification activities. So try and get involved in all of those. Ownership part, if you're on the bench, and especially if you are a fresher or at the junior levels, can still be done because you can choose to write a paper, even 2 pages or 3 pages, and you can take ownership for that in a particular area, right? Or it could be in terms of a small little module that you can attempt to develop on your own, or maybe with a group of people. So the point to remember is that the framework can be leveraged whether you're on the bench or whether you are in a billable project, both. I'll now move back to the slides, but there is a request to show the E slide again, and there is also a question why enthusiasm fades off and does not move into involvement. One request from my side is that I'll come back to the E slide separately towards the end, and I'll answer this question also when we touch upon that slide. Let me do. Okay. I'm sorry, so there is some time. So what I'll do is I'll go back to the E slide. Just 1 minute as requested. I hope this is visible, and this is the E slide, and while we are on this slide, I will try to answer this question which has come in, which is why does enthusiasm fade off and does not move to involvement? There could be multiple reasons for this, okay, and I will attempt to answer. One is there could be a bandwidth problem, as in we might volunteer to do certain things, right? But it is possible that we volunteer and then we are not able to find the time to make the time for whatever we have volunteered for, and that is where the enthusiasm might not get translated into involvement. One other reason could be, and one of my team members had mentioned this once, one other reason could be that maybe we might get discouraged, right? So let's say that I'm in a technical lead role and I demonstrate some enthusiasm to participate in some architecture activities, and I'm told, hey, you're just a tech lead, you don't need to get involved in architecture or higher end stuff and things like that. And if there is an unfortunate situation of that type, then the enthusiasm might go down a little bit. There's no silver bullet, there's no magical way to avoid such situations. My recommendation would be the old-fashioned concept of never giving up. Never give up, because if you're a developer and you're demonstrating enthusiasm to get involved in the next level role and activities, if you're a tech lead wanting to get involved in architecture, if you're an architect wanting to get involved in strategy, right? If you're a practice manager wanting to get involved in the overall practice head activities, right? Or a technical manager wanting to get involved in account management, and so on. Personally, if you can add value, I believe that over a period of time they will not be able to ignore you, right? So the trick is, when will you lose enthusiasm? Will you continue to be enthusiastic in spite of some discouragement and setbacks, or at the first discouragement or setback will the enthusiasm go away? If it doesn't go away, I can guarantee that there will be multiple situations where there will be an opportunity to get involved. If you bring value to the table, then that involvement will keep going up to the extent that people will approach you and say, please can you get involved in this? That last time you were involved in this activity, you added a lot of value, can you please get involved? So that is my opinion, and I hope I'm able to answer that particular question to some extent. I will now run through the other slides or move ahead to where we were, which was on the ownership block. And the other questions I will take after a little bit of time towards the end of the session. Now, beyond ownership, when we think of the U block, the U block represents the ultimate goal, right? And what the framework says is awareness, enthusiasm, involvement, ownership. These are all important, provided they contribute to the ultimate goal, right? They need to be done in the context of the ultimate goal. The question then is, what is the ultimate goal, right? And I would recommend those of you who, some of you might have attended this session if you were a part of my team earlier. But those of you, who are new to this framework, I would recommend you to send in your guess for what is the ultimate goal over the chat. If you've been following the framework so far, I think your guess has a very good chance of being correct. Meanwhile, while you take a minute or two for that, we will have a quick recap on what are the steps of the AEIOU ladder. A is for awareness of the team's goals, objectives, targets, initiatives, key focus areas, and so on and so forth. E is for enthusiasm, to participate in one or more of these, right, initiatives that we become aware of. I is for involvement, actual participation in one or more of the initiatives consistently and over a long period. O is for ownership of at least one initiative in the team. It could be very small, it could be a paper, it could be a component, it could be large, it could be a new service line, it could be a new technology area, it could be a center of excellence activity, a COE, it could be a customer account, right, and ownership for a customer account, maybe because the current person has decided to move away, or so on and so forth. U is for the ultimate goal, and focused efforts on A, E, I, and O will contribute to you, should contribute to you. And with that, we can now move to the final block and what U stands for, the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal for most, and some of you would have got this right, from the guesses. The ultimate goal for every organization and for every team and for every individual for that matter, is growth, right? Now, if you take a look at your screen, my growth, that is the individual's growth, has a relationship with the team's growth, right? And this is very obvious. The obvious part is that my growth as an individual, the way it is connected with my team's growth is that there is a direct relationship, or my growth depends on my team's growth. So this is fairly obvious, right? If we are a part of a growing team, then there is a good chance that we will grow as well. But sometimes this does not happen. Sometimes we are a part of a growing team and a growing organization. We read in newspaper that our company has done very well, but still we're not happy because we are not growing. And what we need to remember is that my growth depends on my team's growth, and it also depends on how I influence my team's growth. And this is the critical part. What the framework is trying to suggest here is that it's very important for us to very clearly show to the environment and to the management how our work and our initiatives, our ownership of initiatives has resulted and contributed to the team's growth. Okay, and I know all of us finally work hard, work sincerely, and contribute to the team's growth. But sometimes it may not be very obvious, or it may not be very clear in terms of how that has happened. And our efforts should be to build our visibility and to focus our efforts such that what we do contributes directly or influences directly the team's growth. Now, the growth that we are talking about, the obvious growth is tangible growth, which is we grew quarter on quarter by so much %. We grew our headcount so much. I am a practice head and I built my team from so much to so much. Or I'm a developer, right? And I was able to contribute so many modules to my project. So the tangible growth, revenues, headcount, new customers, right? Anything related with numbers, this is fairly simple to understand. Now, there is another type of growth which is also important, which is the intangible growth and contributions towards brand, towards visibility, towards mind share, right, can make a big difference to the team's growth. And as an individual, our contributions to those intangible growth also can make a big difference, right? And intangible growth, finally, over the long run, results in tangible growth. If the brand gets built up of the team and the organization, in longer term, that will get translated into numbers-based growth. Now, with this, with the ultimate goal as growth, we can then summarize what are some of the takeaways from the session, which is awareness A, enthusiasm E, involvement I, ownership O, with a focus towards the ultimate goal of growth, is what the AEIOU framework is about, right? And if we keep up on these blocks and try to influence our team's growth, there is a better chance of our growth happening, right? And therefore success. Now, here's the tricky part. Depending on which team we choose, if we choose our project team and we are the project manager, then typically, as a project manager of a project team or an account manager of an account, we might find ourselves on the O, which is owning that initiative completely anyway, and we are contributing to growth. So does that mean that that is the end of the ladder of the AEIOU framework? No, because you can always choose the next level team, and for the next level team, regardless of which role you're playing, typically you will find yourself on the lower rung of the ladder, one of the lower rungs. So if you're an account manager, then at a business unit level, right, maybe you might be on the I block or on the A and E blocks. Or if you're a technical lead for a particular project and you move to the account team at a higher level, then you might find yourself on one of the lower blocks. So the trick in using the framework over a long period of time is redefine what team you are a part of and keep imagining yourself to be a part of the larger team. At some stage, you will not only be a part of the larger team, but you're likely to be heading it, right? And therefore, the process is cyclical in terms of how you use the framework. So the key takeaway then from the session is my growth depends on my team's growth, number one. Second, and also on how I influence the team's growth. And three, the AEIOU approach is a framework which can help me address how I influence or contribute to my team's growth. Now, I'll keep the slide on for a moment before moving on to the questions. And there are a few more